final night of the 3 Keys to Relationship Bliss. And tonight's topic is sacred sexuality and building polarity. I can't wait to share with you over the next 90 minutes how you can actually use your relationship to increase the magnetism that you feel between you so you keep that spark alive. Now, over the last 2 nights, we've been having a bit of an adventure here in deepening the quality of our relationships. On night 1, we talked about accelerated awakening for couples, how you can use this incredible model of heart intelligence to heal yourself at the deepest levels imaginable with your partner so that you can do that together. Because when we dare to be witnessed and felt by those that love us, we get to digest our core wounding, something very, very powerful indeed. And then yesterday, we had an incredible opportunity to look at heart-centered communication and how we can build our intimacy if we just learned a few simple techniques to increase the capacity to express and receive each other. And we saw a wonderful demo of how quickly, simply, and easily we can just come alive with that. But tonight, we have an opportunity to take it even further, and I'm excited to take you on this journey of sacred sexuality and polarity. Actually, it's one of my favorite topics, so I can't wait to take you on this journey. But before we begin, we need to define what polarity actually is. Now, as you know, I'm here at a live event, Love, Relationships and You, in Holland. And I'm here in front of a wonderful group of people, and we have some incredibly courageous people here in the room because they've been willing to demo and show up for all of you, risking exposing themselves to the world. So I hope you'll hold space and create a sacred space with the rest of us here live to ensure that this is done in a way where they feel really welcomed. And I know that even though they don't see you and you're thousands of miles away, energetically, they're going to feel it. So let's get started. Polarity, what is it and why is it important? Well, polarity, to put it simply, is the electrochemical arc of attraction. It's the magnetism that you and another experience and feel. Polarity is not something that is just innate to relationships. You can have polarity with nature, with a country, with an animal. What it means is that when a certain frequency is matched with a complementary frequency on the opposite end of the spectrum, and let's just, for the sake of argument, say that this is feminine and this is masculine. I'm not talking about man and woman. I'll go into this later. But when you go into a place such as Hawaii, a beautiful, lush island, let's just, for the sake of calling that, let's call that feminine. It's a very open, lush, it's just green and flowing, and when you arrive, you just kind of melt and relax and want to hang. That's a bit of a generalization. I'm sure there's some hardworking people in Hawaii. But contrast that to New York, okay? You arrive in New York, everybody is going somewhere. Big, erect, penetrating skyscrapers going into the sky. So it's very clear that that has more of a masculine feel. So when you walk into Hawaii versus New York, you can feel the energy is different. And if you are naturally more inclined to feel more feminine, when you walk into New York, you'll feel this zzz, you'll feel it. There'll be a sense of connection there. Likewise, as well, you will experience, if you are have a masculine essence and you walk into the island of Hawaii, you'll feel the feminine of that place. So that's an example of how polarity can exist with places. When it comes to human beings, though, something is very, very important to share. And it was interesting. This morning, I was giving this lecture on polarity, and I had to repeat myself time and time again on one of the most important parts of this entire lecture. Because if you don't hear what I'm about to say now, you're going to confuse and hold true to a piece of conditioning that has been a myth in our culture for decades, if not longer. I mean, this is huge myth, and the myth is this, that if I am a man, I need to develop my masculine energy, and I have a masculine energy, and that if my woman is, of course, a woman, she has a feminine essence, and she needs to become more of a woman. And that polarity occurs because I'm in my deep masculine and she's in her deep feminine, and therefore we can have that attraction. It does not work that way. It's been written about like that for years, but it simply is not true. Do not confuse gender with essence or the force of masculine and feminine energies that move within us. And the most important part of this, let's just start with what I call internal polarity. Internal polarity, as the name would suggest, is the actual relationship you have to the masculine and feminine within you. You see, this morning we wrote out some of the masculine and feminine qualities. Now, the confusing thing, what's so insidious, it's so easy to do, is as you read and you kind of take in and digest these different qualities, what happens is that you begin to think, well, if I'm a man, I should have these qualities. And if I'm a woman, I should have these qualities. Or if I have a masculine type of essence, I should possess and own and express more of that. And if I have a feminine essence, I should express more of this. And that is not true. And I'll share with you why in a moment. Let me just cover what it means to be animating or expressing more of a masculine force. Some of the words, if you can't read it on the camera here, are things like presence, light, detachment, competition, sky, spirit, stillness, death, infinity, vertical, assertiveness, focus, direction, control, penetration, structure, giving, logical, containment, brilliance, determination, persistence, specific, action, freedom, clarity. Now, you may be going, I'm not sure if I agree if that's all masculine, and that's for debate. But that's just a starting point. It's just you can get a general idea that those are some of the words that define this thing that we call a masculine force. But then let's look at the feminine force over here. Again, this is not that this is right or wrong. This is just a place to come from. This is just to help you get a clarity about these two different forces. Look at some of these words: mystery, birth, chaos, communication, mother, earth, flexible, expressive, emotion, nurturing, sensitivity, receptive, vulnerable, movement, compassion. These are beautiful words to describe that feminine part. So if you were to see that there was a range here of masculine and feminine, and this is what we call the emotional energetic range. And within each of us, we must develop this range. So the myth that I'm speaking to is the thought that if you're a woman or if you have a feminine essence, you need to connect more to this. And if you're a man with a masculine essence, you need to connect more to that. It's not true. The thing that you need to do is have an integrated alliance and an expanded connection to them both. You must learn to actually have a polarity within yourself before you can experience a polarity with somebody outside of yourself. What that means is that you need to practice owning, connecting to, and expanding these ranges within your own experience. So you need to develop both the feminine force and the masculine force within you. And when you do that, it creates an incredible amount of juice and energy. And I'll share with you why. So we've defined this masculine and feminine. Now let's look at how that works to create juice. And by juice, I mean every single one of us has the capacity to connect to our fire. This burning, bright light that just generates energy and allows us to be charismatic, to be inspiring, to be where we can walk into the room and we light it up. That possibility, that potential to walk into any space and light up the room is generated through a charisma. But that charisma is created by what we call internal polarity. So let me share with you how that works. Now, this is going to seem a little bit heady at first because I'm going to do some electronics with you. So here we go. Here is a battery. That's the electronic symbol for the battery. So let's say positive and negative. We draw a circuit here, and then we put a lamp in the circuit, and we reconnect the circuit. All circuits need to have a completion, so the positive needs to be connected to the negative. So far, so good. Now, in order for this lamp to glow and to actually generate light, it needs two things. It needs the actual energy, which is the electricity, the amps, the electrons themselves, and it needs a force to push those little electrons around the circuit, and as it pushes it through the lamp glows. Nice and simple. So in order to actually have a bright light, a charismatic potential in your life, you need to have a good, healthy relationship between the positive and negative within yourself. So far, so good? Which means you need the energy, which comes through a healthy mind, a healthy body, healthy connection to source, your connection with others. There are many ways that you can generate potential energy. But often, the source of energy that we need in our life is bound. And what I mean by that is we often experience through life trauma where we repress certain memories and emotions, and we make certain parts of this range wrong. So let's say, for example, that you know that part of the feminine is to be fully uncontained, perhaps to be in your anger or your sadness or to show emotion. And perhaps when you were younger, that was made wrong. So you now don't have access to that fuel. So that fuel is locked away. That's like halving the amps. So now, instead of having a bright light that should be shining with 100 amps, you now got only 50. Because the other 50 is stored, bound in your body as a repressed memory and trauma. So that's why when you do your own work and you expand these ranges, you create more availability of this energy to flow. But there's other things that are important too. You need a solid amount of energy, of fuel, the emotion, but you also need that energy to move. That's why we call it energy in motion or emotion. And that is, we need a force. These are, in the electrical circuit, the analogy would be the volts. The volts, or the potential difference, is the amount of contrast between the positive and the negative. So if I draw a diagram here where this is a waterfall and this is about 10 meters high, as we drop water over, the height actually has an effect on the amount of energy that has, the force. The higher this waterfall, the more the force. Yes? So if the same amount of water came over the waterfall, the amount of height makes a difference to that energy. So if you could send these pellets of energy 100 miles an hour through this lamp and then 50 miles an hour through this lamp, it's going to be brighter with more force. Make sense? So therefore, the things that we need to do to increase polarity first within ourselves is we need to release the energy that is bound in our systems through doing the internal work to feel all of ourselves and expand our emotional energetic range. And we need to claim all of it, not just our masculine if we're men or our feminine if we're women. We have to get out of this idea that if you're a woman, you have this feminine energy, and therefore you need to be more this, more of a woman. And if I'm a man, I need to show up and be more masculine, more this, more that. That is really, really harming our relationships, because then we judge each other when we're not showing up. And what you'll realize is that the only way to fully come alive in partnership is if we both generate the internal polarity. First, as I said, to release the bound energy in your system through claiming more of who you are, but also by doing that, you have to learn how to create polarity within yourself. You have to learn how to balance, use, and have an experience of the feminine and masculine and be able to express both. Because as you express both, people in your life begin to feel it as this edge. This is hard to describe, but when you are too imbalanced with this, people will feel like someone who is ultra in their masculine energy but doesn't own their feminine become a little bit too hard around the edges, and they feel a little bit discompassionate, and they're a bit vertical. They're unable to feel others and have really coherent relationships. And often if somebody is way into the feminine, they're so into the flow and in movement, but they lack that ability to actually manifest effectively in their life because they haven't owned the other part that allows them to direct that energy. Makes sense, right? So we actually really need both of these, but I do acknowledge that because we have both doesn't mean we have both in equal balance. So for example, I am not talking about the fact that everybody is neutral, that, you know, if we need to integrate both of these, then half of our being is masculine and half is feminine. That is actually not the case. We will own, when we own all of this, we will realize that we have a different proportion of these masculine and feminine, and it will be unique to us. So some of us will have maybe 80% feminine and 20% masculine, and that will be the combination of that. Others will be in a different reverse order. It doesn't really matter what the ratio of masculine and feminine is. It's just important that you realize that you need to own both to create the internal polarity before you can have a healthy relationship. So far, so good. Great. So that is internal polarity. Then the interesting thing comes is to, all right, now that I've generated this capacity to feel my own charismatic generator of energy, how do I then share that with my partner in such a way that we build intimacy and create that juicy spark? Well, like I said, first of all, we need to know where we feel most at home. And what I mean by at home is this. Don't know how many pieces of paper I'm going to move through, but we'll see. Here, oops, back to my crazy, let's say this is feminine, masculine again, the spectrum. One being ultra feminine, one being ultra masculine. Nobody really exists at the end of this. So there's always some positioning that takes place. We need to first, before we create polarity with another, understand where we most feel at home. What that means is, even though we have both, there's a place that you'll find it easy to relax and rest and feel, this is where you most like and can most easily receive and feel good. So you will find a place in the spectrum where you can call home. But you need to be able to move to both extremes, even though a place is called home. The reason why is this. When you're with a woman, or if you're a woman, when you're with a man, when you're with your partner, there's going to be moments when they're going to be in their more masculine mode or in their more feminine mode. And you can have polarity no matter what at any time. Because all you need to do is understand where they are and then move into the polarity that can generate the energy for that moment. So if I witness my partner coming back in a very masculine space, I have a choice. I go even more masculine and penetrate her to the point where she just breaks open into her feminine. Choice number one. It is definitely a possibility. And then she needs to work through, am I now willing to surrender in that moment? The other option is to, in fact, be in a very sensitive, open, and flowing place and offer that nurturing to that force that comes back home. And then find that there's actually juice there too. And that it will find its way back into balance naturally. So there are multiple ways. There's no right or wrong way to do it. But here's the thing. If you do not work on your polarity, your relationships will go flat. And there's a simple reason why. All forces and all energy in life seek the lowest energy level. And what that basically means is a ball does not roll uphill naturally on its own without energy. So because a ball will naturally fall down, as will the polarity of a relationship, will come to neutrality on itself, because it takes energy to create the tension to create the polarity. So we need to understand that work is required to generate the polarity that keeps that healthy spark alive. So when I say it requires work or energy, it sounds like, but in fact, this is the most joyful work you can ever possibly imagine, like you will see in just a moment. Let me just grab some water here. Now let me just share with you one of the challenges to generating healthy polarity. Then we'll do a quick demo of how this works so you can actually see it in action, because that's going to be really, really vital. And then I'll debrief it, and then we'll take some questions and all of that. I shared this morning this analogy too, but I think it's worth sharing with you all at home as well. And this was originally taken from David Dadar. David Dadar, as many of you will know, is a relationship expert who really coined the term polarity, and he's written many, many books on it. And I recommend you go and check them out because that's a great additional resource to this work. He coined the notion of the fact that we have these shells that often surround our essence. So like I shared here, even though we have the masculine and feminine within us, there's a place that we call home. And he calls that the essence, the place where we reside. It's our true nature. It's like we can go here, but it's like an elastic band. We stretch out and we bounce back right to home. It's just boom, right back to home. However, what often happens is when we get born, and these essences are basically defined at birth. In other words, that's what we're given. It's not something that's developed through conditioning. What's conditioned on us are the shells that surround these essences. So what happens is we are born with a certain amount of masculine and feminine energy in a certain proportion, like I shared earlier. But then what happens is, depending on our childhood experiences, we develop these shells that protect us and others from feeling our true home and our true essence. I'm going to give you some real-life examples of how this can look so you can get an idea of how this can play out. Imagine for a moment that a family exists where the parents give birth to two beautiful girls. It's just that one girl happens to have great, pretty looks, and the other girl has maybe great brains or great intellect, but may not have the same physical assets of the sister. However, they both have deep, deep feminine energy and essence running through them. But the parents, when they kind of take them through the early years, treat them differently because of their outward, more superficial assets, attributes, and skills. So at Christmas, for example, the younger, so the sister who may be externally more feminine may get things like a sparkly dress or a shiny, beautiful something that just lights her up. I say something because this is not really my speciality, but they get something that just adorns them and helps them connect to, wow, it feels so good to be in this place of my feminine. But the other feminine child instead gets given the Encyclopedia Britannica. It's because they're stimulating the intellect. And then as the parents give it to that child, they're saying, this is just an example, by the way, your sister has looks, but you have brains. So somehow justifying the difference in the way that they're treated. But the little girl's feminine core is going, ooh, wow, okay, my sister's got looks, but I have brains. Therefore, the feminine is not as valuable as the masculine that I'm being portrayed as, and they begin to disown and crush their feminine core, and they start to grow this shell of, I need to be more of the masculine so that I can function and get my parental approval, etc., etc., etc. Anyway, so they walk through life totally feeling like it's not okay to be feminine, but it's better to be clear, smart, and directional and have a great career and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, fill in the blanks. Until they reach high school, which something interesting happens. They notice the girls that are more open to their feminine attract men. And they realize that their shell doesn't seem to attract men in the same way. They seem to end up being a bit of like the high school nerd. So what happens then is that they go, I need to be more like them. But because their feminine core is crushed, they develop a fake feminine around their masculine shell. And we call that a bimbo act. They now play out a whole different energy to present themselves as feminine, but it's not the deep feminine, it's the emasculated, or it's the artificial feminine that gets superimposed on a masculine kind of compensation. It sounds a bit complicated, but basically we grow all these different shells, and most of us often get confused and we don't know what our essence is. And it's important to know that if we're going to create polarity with our partner. Now, the same example now for the men. Imagine a little boy grows up with an alcoholic father and he's really excited about everything that he's doing in his life, and he's there and he's sharing in a moment of passion. I want to be a Superman, or I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a fireman. And in that moment his alcoholic father slaps him and says, shut up, you're never going to be anything, you're never going to amount to anything. What do you know about what you're going to do with your life? So in a moment of deep unconsciousness, the father inflicts huge pain to the child. Now, of course, that child now goes deep inside and he goes, oh my God, it's not safe to assert my passion and my direction. And instead, I need to be super ultra sensitive to where my daddy is so that I can tell when he's going to get mad. Because as a child, when a father is spontaneously angry, which doesn't seem to make any sense, and it's always seemed to be so random because it's related to alcohol, the child becomes hypervigilant and they start to check out of their own body, they become disembodied, and they begin to develop this incredible sensitivity of where the danger may come from next. They're always now in giving mode. I need to please daddy. Where's daddy? Is daddy okay? Is daddy okay? And because of that, they develop this ultra feminine kind of quality while they crush their masculine presence inward. So now these are more feminized men, wounded feminine, covering this masculine core, and then they get to high school, and then they realize the guys who are getting the girls, in fact, are men who have owned this. And they realize, I need to own more of this. So they think I need to be stronger and more macho. So they then create a macho kind of act around this feminized compensation, which is covering a deep, deep masculine core at the core. So in order to do this work, we have to kind of go through all these different shells. And those are just the basic shells. It could even be much, much deeper wounding going on, and we need to kind of go through all the layers until we arrive home. Good news is that if you become conscious of all of this, we can bring all of this together in our relationships, and our relationships will bring it up instantly. If you want to know how to disarm these shells, just get together with somebody in relationship, because most of the time you will attract your reciprocal. When I say most, and nearly all the time you attract your reciprocal. So the macho act attracts the bimbo act, and then the acts have a relationship. The feminine shell will attract the masculine shell so that they can heal and then dissolve, and what you're left with is the masculine and feminine. Because when you come together, it will either fall apart or reveal what is false and inauthentic. And that's the beauty of relationships, is that we can do that together. Now, before we go into these demos, let me just share something that's very, very important. We all know that through basic magnetism that positive and negative attract. So when you have a positive pole and a negative pole, there is a source of chemical and electrical and passionate connection that comes between. But I want to show you how that looks rather than just tell you about it, because there's one thing to just say it in words, there's another thing altogether than to see it in action. But the way we're going to see it is that we're going to physicalize the emotional and energetic qualities of this, because what we're talking here is primarily on the energetic emotional level. And as you're not here feeling it live with us, we're going to have to physicalize how this looks so you can see it in physical representation. But I don't want you to get confused with the fact that this is what you do. This is what you should now go and practice with people at home, and this is what polarity is. The demo is trying to reflect how polarity can work in your relationship on an emotional, energetic level, but we're physicalizing it. I hope that's really, really clear. I'll remind you again so you don't get into an idea of thinking this is what it should look like. So a couple of days ago, we saw Rule and Sheila come up as they started to work on this idea of building better polarity. And they've been willing, once again, to step up and show how that is coming along, which I believe is super courageous, because it's one thing to show yourself once, but then to continue to show yourself takes an enormous amount of courage. And over the few days while they've been working at this event, you're going to see how they are progressing. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome both Sheila and Rule up onto the virtual stage. Thank you. Thank you both for doing this again as we start to work on the next phase.
Yes.
Now, I know, because we've been working on it today, that you are fully aware of how this works and how polarity works. But I want them to know a little bit about how it looks when we both try to take space together at the same time, how it looks when we both want to lead. So right now, think of polarity as having complementary qualities. So a complementary quality is, for example, if one person is giving, the other is receiving. If one person is penetrating, the other person is letting in. If one person's, coming into that force, the other person is coming into surrender. So that's healthy polarity, when we realize we can actually complement the qualities that we both have. But when we start to try and both be the same thing at the same time, what happens is that you'll notice there is a jar and an inconsistency, and the energy doesn't quite feel right. So I'm actually going to ask them to, on purposely, mess up the polarity. I'm going to ask them first right now to be on the positive pole. I want them to try to both lead, and we're going to do this through movement. Through movement. We're going to actually simulate polarity and physicalize it through the dynamic of just them expressing their power in movement. So it's going to be a bit like they're going to fight each other, but not fisticuffs in a way that's going to be hurting. I mean, we've got ground rules here that it's safe. Now, I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. Sometimes it's really healthy to kind of like engage each other in this way. It can feel really cathartic if we're kind of frustrated with each other. Hey, yeah, roll around on the ground and have a good old mess up and fight and wrestle. That can be really great. But you're not going to generate the polarity that we're looking for, and you'll see it completely in a different way in just a moment. Actually, what I am going to do is just, if you can just come off here, I know I asked people to do it a bit differently. I'm just going to pull this way. There we go, so level it up a little bit. Cool. So, come together here. Yeah, you probably won't want the mics right now. So get into the center, and a little bit more in the center here, so we get a lot of sheet space. Now, the rules are, of course, that you need to be safe with each other. So I want you to respect and honor that. But at the same time, the energy that I want you to both come from is you're both wanting to lead, like two dancers who both have a tune in their head, and you're both going to try and take each other in that internal rhythm, in that tune. Now, we've got no music playing, so you're just going to have to do this through your own internal rhythm. And if you want to get down on the ground, hey, go for it. But you can't poke each other's eyes and choke each other out and slap and claw and, all that other good stuff. No biting, Sheila. I saw that earlier. Okay, great. So, you guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Go. Okay. Excellent. Wonderful. Pause. All right. I don't really need to explain the dysfunction of what we just saw right there. Okay. Now, just out of curiosity, you can speak. Oh, the mic's coming. Because everyone in the camera, everyone at home could see clearly how that doesn't. It doesn't look great. It doesn't feel like you guys are really connecting. It doesn't really look like there's much intimacy. But what's going on for you energetically, emotionally? Because that's something they don't see. They just see you're physically jarring with each other. But what's going on for you energetically and emotionally?
I feel energy building.
Yes.
But it's running only me, or I only feel my own energy.
Yes.
I absolutely don't feel matched in that.
Yeah.
It's more the opposite of that. Yeah, she's working against where I want to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
So therefore, she's not responsive.
Mm-hmm.
She's not surrendering. She's not giving back in a way that is complementing you. It's in an antagonistic way.
Absolutely.
Great. Very clear. Do you have anything else you want to add to that?
I feel aggressive.
You feel aggressive?
Yeah, and enclosed.
Cool. Very clear. Okay, so this is what happens when your polarity is matched positive to positive, using the example of a battery. So when you do that, it's going to clash. Now, many of you will relate to this as an experience in your own relationships, where it will feel like you're just constantly in a dynamic where you're triggering each other. And neither of you can just relax and surrender. You're both wanting to be right. You're both wanting to assert power. So there's a power dynamic. There's always one-upmanship. Yeah, this is what happens. This is the physicalized version of what that looks like when we're in that version of polarity. Clear? But the opposite can also happen. Let's go now to the polarity of you both going to, in this analogy, the negative pole, which is I want neither of you to lead because I want you both to come from the perspective that you're waiting for the other to go first, which is another really common relationship dynamic. Waiting for somebody else to go first, always checking in with them and no you, no you, no you, no you, no you, no you, no you. So let's and you can still move. You don't have to stay absolutely still, and like but it's like you're anticipating somebody else to go, and you're in that. Okay, really fabulous demonstration. Now, what do we have the mic again here? It's very clear to us physically what's going on. You're demonstrating it beautifully. But what's going on inside? What's happening for you? Do you still feel the energy building?
I felt flat.
Yeah, it goes flat. Exactly.
Boring.
Yep.
Uncertain.
Yep.
Doubts coming up.
Interesting. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Remind you of anything? No, isn't that a common state though? We're either in battle mode or we go flat and the doubts come up and we feel de-energized and everything's just like bleh. Those are the two most common relationship states in existence. Is to this or to bleh. Because we're not sensitive to the polarity. Great. Anything else you want to add? Do you still feel aggressive?
No.
Just really frustrated? No, maybe not. Just flat as well?
Yeah, flat.
Flat, yeah. Anything else? You feel so flat there's nothing else, is
Yeah.
it? I get it. Wonderful. Wonderful. Fantastic. Thank you. So now, of course, we're dramatizing it a little bit because I want you to see it rather than just hear it. Now let's actually go for the real thing. And this is going to require actually you both to go to that real place of authentic surrender and leadership surrender. Remember, it's not just it's not because he's the guy he's now leading and Sheila's a woman, therefore she surrenders. They need to both animate both of these, like I shared, in order to make this successful. It's the only way, is that if they embody both of these, they have a chance of doing this right. But it's not easy because they have to continuously be with themselves, they have to feel each other, and they have to make the choice in moments to, when do I yield? And that means letting go consciously with an open heart, knowing that I'm in my power, but I'm choosing to joyfully surrender, versus when do I assert leadership? And in moments, I'm sure you'll see them both going into positive, positive, negative, negative, but you'll also see the polarity, and sometimes it will flip one way and flip the other. So you can't do this wrong, and there's always a perfection to it. Give it a go. So, and have fun. It's an enjoyable process. Fantastic. Beautiful. Wonderful. Okay, just pause there for a moment. Amazing. Let's just acknowledge them both for their courage. Wonderful. Wonderful. Beautiful. Now, just stay exactly where you are. I'll just come down to you guys. So, I'm curious. I'm just going to ask the audience here first. What did you can just call it out and I'll repeat it if the camera can't hear. What did you see going on there? In other words, what did you notice? What was either the medicine for you, or what did you see them doing? It was playful. It was juicy. It went back and forth. Nobody took this single pole. Healthy polarity switches. It's not, I'm the man, she's the woman. It's not that. It switches continuously throughout the day, throughout the night, throughout the play. So it's playful, it's joyful. What else?
There's connectedness that has to happen if they're going to switch back and forth.
They have to connect and be in sync, which means they have to feel each other. Did you notice that 80% of the time they were right there, and there was a few times when they, and that's okay. That becomes a playful exploration. So we don't make that wrong. It's just notice that there are moments that were sublimely connected and moments that were a little bit more fragmented. You notice that, right? But isn't that life? Sometimes it's a little bit messy. Sometimes it's, oh my God, that was sublime. And that's just the way it is. So we get to take the rough with the smooth. Anything else?
Yes.
It was passionate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something I want to speak to as well is, and I'm speaking this not for this because we've seen it so much today as we've been practicing this type of work, but for those of you at home, it may trigger when you see a man being, holding down a woman with her hands. It could trigger this feeling of, oh my God, is he being aggressive? Is it violent? Is it, honoring and respectful for the woman? And so therefore there's sometimes the reason why we have a depolarized culture is that we've emasculated men and we've defeminized women, and we've tried to make each other neutral. And in that neutrality, it's usually created by a wounding, a feeling that somehow it's not okay to assert our strength, our leadership, our presence, our penetration. And for women, it's like the word surrender is like, ugh, it's like almost repulsive. It's like, because I'm giving up my power. But there's no giving up of power here. There is love, and every single action of that is sponsored by love. So it's very joyful for many women to be pinned down, and for a man as well, of course, but in this case, a woman to be pinned down, because there is a feeling of opening that comes with it. So if you're running an agenda or an idea or a thought that, oh my God, that may be aggressive or maybe violating or violent, check it out. Let's hear what they have to say about it. So I'm kind of curious, what's moving with you? Now I've given you a nice breath to catch your breath there. It's nice and strategic, wasn't it? So, so what's going on for you?
I'm feeling alive,
Mm-hmm.
energized. I feel met. I feel very safe. Welcome.
Yeah, and that feels great. And what is it that you're feeling in terms of the connection with Sheila?
Oh. I feel a lot of love. I feel an open energy energized connection. Very aware of the area in my hips.
Mm.
Feel very embodied.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you feel that spark or that juicy connection between the two of you?
Of course.
Kind of, yeah, I was going to say it's a bit of a rhetorical
That's what
question.
you want to hear.
I feel it, but it's more of a vocalization of that.
Yeah.
In other words,
Yeah.
it feels very different to what you did prior.
I feel attracted to her.
Ah, great. That's a good. Yeah, okay. She wants the mic. Give me the mic.
Yeah.
I'm curious. On that note, do you feel more attractive to him when he's in that space?
Yeah.
You may want to bring that up, like you're eating it.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yes, I want to say that I can claim you and feel claimed by you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's clear space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how is it different to how 2 days ago we were playing with an approach process? How is this different? How's your experience of this connection different 2 days later?
I feel he's feeling himself quite well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I cannot escape from
You cannot
his
escape
presence. No.
from his presence?
Yeah.
That's a really wonderful way of putting it. I cannot escape from his presence. And that feels good, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. He likes that.
So it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And how does that feel for you as a woman? What's going on in your body?
I feel relaxed and safe, and I have a yearning for being together.
It brings you together, yeah.
I feel sexy and open.
Wow. Very, very cool. And now here's the interesting thing. Check this out. How do you feel in your body witnessing that? In other words, do you feel more open than before or closed? Do you feel more available to your own sexiness?
Yeah,
Or not?
alive.
Sorry?
Alive.
You feel alive?
Present.
Present?
Open.
Open?
Sexy.
Playful.
Yes. So here's the beautiful thing. As you give yourselves permission to access this polarity, and you demonstrate that, and you show it in your life lived, you unconsciously and consciously are giving other people permission to do exactly the same thing. That's how you open the room. That's how you open to life and open life. Is that nobody can not be affected by the beauty that you carry. So it's a gift to the world when you own this for each other. Yay.
I feel that I come home now.
You feel that you come home. Yeah. Yeah. Now, to the audience at home, notice that even though we've stopped the polarity dance, quote unquote, where they're no longer physically doing the exercise, but notice how the polarity is still very present, and it's still going on right now as Rule is present, as they're sharing with each other. So even in the verbal communication, the polarity is still active. So I hope you're catching that it doesn't just end with the exercise, which is just there to show you something, but now feel how they're relating to one another. The polarity is still here. But notice the polarity is here because she's not just totally and only in her feminine, or you're just totally in the masculine. They're both actually internally running both of them. Because in the dance, they had to both animate the masculine and the feminine together. They both had to do that. Now, that's what generates the juice that they both feel. And when they both feel juicy, they can share the juice. That's why we have to do our own work. And when we bring that juice that we've generated ourselves together, and then we match it with the polarity, we have spark. It's not easy. It takes practice, takes work. It's something that we need to consistently bring into our relationships and our couples. But when we do it, it makes our relationships come alive. And then you add that to the quality of increased heart-centered communication, and then you add that the healing quality of relationships. You can see that this is the best personal development retreat you can ever be on. Relationship is the best personal development retreat if you do it consciously, and it's the worst nightmarish hell if you can't and don't know how to navigate it. I mean, it's painful to have someone you really, really love and to see that connection decay over the years, and for it to be so unnecessarily, and then to see the kids being affected by it all, it's devastating, and it doesn't have to be that way. So I thank you for the courage to be willing again to show up, and all of you actually for being here, because those of you that are here have demonstrated and are defining and declaring that your relationships are important enough to work on and save and move to the next level, and I really, really appreciate that. So thank you. I'm going to just take a few questions. Yeah, thank you, guys. Beautiful. Now, as we continue this theme of polarity, as I said, the topic of this evening was, polarity. Ollie, is that camera focused on me, or is it? Again, you can tell this is live. It's looking at my groin. It's like, I was just about to say, the topic of this webinar is sacred sexuality. It's like, really? Okay. So you could be asking, what does polarity have to do with sacred sexuality? Well, everything. Because polarity, as I said, is how you create that attraction between you and your partner. Sacred sexuality is not just about the physical act of making love or sex. Sacred sexuality is realizing that your entire body is a doorway to the divine. When you actually allow yourself to energetically flow with all of what's available inside of you. And polarity is a big part of it, but let me just explain just in a really, really briefly. This is a sideways view of, actually, there we go, sideways view. There you go. Sideways view of somebody. Not mentioning any names. Now, What? Baroot. Okay. Now, this is their back, of course. This is their front. So often what happens is when we are not owning all of our emotional energetic range, what happens is that we begin to shut down certain parts of us, and that affects our energetic and emotional availability. We don't feel that we have access to our emotions and our energy. So what happens then is that when emotions and energies try to flow, they don't flow very, very well. And so what we need to do is, by expanding and claiming our emotional energetic range, we begin to free the circuit of sexual energy that moves in our body. Now, the sexual energy, let's say it starts here in our root. It usually takes the journey up the back of our spine. It's called the back channel. Sorry, the pen is not very good, but we'll use it for now. And it kind of goes up around the crown, and then it goes down through the front of the body, like that. It's called the front channel. Oh my God, it's getting worse. Front channel. Oops, can't spell front. Here we go. Now, here's the thing. Men are normally more open at the back, women are more normally open at the front. As the energy circulates, it allows you to feel your sexual energy all over your body. So as long as your back channel and front channel are open, sexuality will no longer just be a genital experience, it will be a whole body experience. So when people talk about whole body orgasms, heart orgasms, where they feel like every single cell is exploding with light and love, what that basically means is that they in that moment have access to an open channel on the front and the back. The back channel reflects someone's energy. The front channel reflects emotion. In other words, if your back channel is open, you will feel energetically alive everywhere. If your front channel is open, you feel emotionally connected, and you have access to vulnerability, maybe sadness, tears of joy. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the ideal scenario is to be energetically and emotionally connected. So when we talk about expanding your emotional energetic range, your energetic ranges open up your spine, and your emotional ranges open up the front of your body. And often we hold tension and blockages, and certain parts of our front and back channels are blocked. So the art of sacred sexuality is to notice where we are blocked so that we can release them and come into full whole body bliss. And then our connection with our partner is no longer just about intercourse and in-out penetrating dynamics, but it's now an exquisite experience that starts at the beginning of the day. The moment you get up and you look at your partner in their eyes and you cherish them through every action, every word, everything that you do and say is a process of making love that you can do by yourself with your partner, and it becomes an exquisite dance that doesn't end. So it's not like ejaculate and then we're done, or we climax. It's not that. And when these front and back channels are open, orgasm changes. Because normally what happens is that as we go through the day and through our week and through our life, things happen, and our nervous system doesn't know how to deal with what happens, and we build up tension. So tension is the natural response to accumulated undigested stuff that occurs during our day. Make sense? This tension, therefore, is often the thing that builds up, and it's often the thing that gets released when we have sex. That's why we hear about the tension release orgasm. It's like when somebody is sexually aroused, they feel that tension and it builds up, and they get into that state of bliss for a few seconds. And that tension release cycle is good at, as I said, releasing pent-up energy in the system, but it doesn't really add that much to intimacy. Intimacy, in terms of the connection, it doesn't do that much for intimacy. It could be joyful, but it doesn't go deep. it stays at quite a superficial level. So as you work on opening the front and the back channels sexually, it allows you to experience an exquisite depth to your lovemaking, where you can actually feel each other. So when you're inside of your woman, or a woman is receiving her man, it's not just felt as an, oh, I can feel you physically inside of me. It's like, oh my God, you have entered the deepest parts of my heart and soul, and you are totally taking me open. It's a completely different, exquisite experience. But rather than me go into any more detail about this, I'd rather do it through a Q&A session and actually ask if you have questions, and I'm sure it will relate back to a lot of what we've been talking about today. So, yes, Ollie, you have a question?
Right, the chat's broken.
Okay.
So people are wondering at home why they can't chat. That's not just you. And we can also not display any buttons.
We can't display any buttons? Okay, so if you didn't hear Ollie there, he said that the chat's broken, so you won't be able to chat. Okay, whatever. We're going to have to be enough, so you're not getting distracted by that. And what else did you say? We don't have any buttons? What do you mean buttons? Sorry? An offer button. Oh, I see, yes. That means if you wanted to register for our Hard IQ Academy, you can't. But we'll send you the link in the email. Don't worry about that. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But first, let's do some Q&A. Apologize that we can't take your questions from the chat then, but at least we can talk about those questions here that are present. So, who's got a question? Raise your hand, and we'll bring you the mic, and we will begin. Go ahead. Oh, okay. Hello. We all had, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so when I'm in conflict with my partner, is it wise to go into polarities or into sexuality?
When you have conflicts with your partner, is it wise to work on deepening your polarity in that moment?
Yes.
Now that's... Okay. Interesting. Depends on the conflict, okay? Because here's the thing. Have you ever been in that situation where, let's say, you're having an argument with your partner, and let's say your partner gets really angry with you, and they storm out of the room and just slam the door and say, "Don't talk to me, leave me alone." Is that what they really want? Or potentially do they want you to come in anyway? Now, here's the question. If they want you to come in anyway, do they want you to come in, "You okay, honey?" Or do they want you to go, "Pah! Come here"? See, that's a call that you're going to have to make. It's a risky call. But I have seen it work in my own life, and in supposedly friends' life, where they have gone for the risky maneuver of their partner saying, "No, I don't want to talk right now," and they burst through the door, pin them to the ground, and make love to them. And they are opened and the conflict's over. I've seen that. I've also seen the opposite. Where they burst through the door and it's like, okay, I won't try that again. With the trust of a relationship in place and with really strong boundaries, it is possible to break through those boundaries for the sake of healthy polarity, and it can really do well to heal your conflict. But that's if there's really strong agreements, really strong safety. And most conflict is resolved when people are taking more independence. So for example, let's say you and I had a conflict. I would say, "Okay, Bernard, this is what's going on for me, and this is how I'm feeling. And when you did this, it made me feel this way. Please repeat what I just said so I know you understand it." And then you will repeat it, and I go, "Thank you, I feel understood." And I'll say, "What's moving with you?" And you'll go, "Well, this is what's moving with me. This is how what you did made me feel. Now please repeat back, Christian, what I've just said so I can feel felt." And I'll go, "Okay, Bernard, here you go. This is what I just heard." Boring. That is the independent stage of relationships, and that's how most people resolve conflict if they're advanced That's advanced, what I've just shared with you. Most people aren't in that space. Most people resolve conflict this way. You fucking idiot. This is what you did. And cut off the ties, paint the car, whatever. That's the dependent stage of relationships where I feel hurt and I punish you. You hurt me, I hurt you back. And then conflict is this. When we become into independence, it's more, I am responsible. I create my own reality. I have done some work on myself. So now I'm going to share, and you're going to share back, and we're going to work it out by talking about it. But there's a whole other stage that's available where the polarity comes into play, where you don't even, it's not even about the talking anymore. The polarity is the conflict resolution. That's why I'm saying it's difficult to say a blanket yes or no answer because it depends on the stage in which your relationship is at. I'm really a fan of that independent and interdependent stages and moving people well away from the dependent stage of relationship, which is destroying our lives. Because independence is a good place to come to, but it's boring after a while. So the place that I want to take people is to that, but you can't go there without first developing strong independent communication. Make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, great question. Who's next?
Yeah, so kind of following up on the anger bit, is there a way of dealing with anger without depolarizing your relationship?
Is there a way of dealing with anger? And by dealing, I just want to get really clear. You're talking about how to, so if one of the partners is really, really angry, or both partners are really, really angry, or both people are not feeling any anger?
The first two. So like if one partner is angry or if both partners are angry, like what ways can you express it or how can you deal with it in a way that won't depolarize your relationship?
Great. Let's just make sure that we define anger, because anger is the healthy assertion of the self-worth of a good, healthy no. So when somebody does something and it breaches our boundary and we go, that's not okay, anger is the natural response to assert something where we feel worthy enough to say no. That's very different to the anger that comes up through betrayal, through the anger that comes up, which is actually rage, where we rage out, and it's a pressure cooker that finally explodes. So, and then there's the anger that comes through as passive aggressiveness, like, you know, you can feel it, like they're absolutely raging inside, but they come out with a real sweet little, fucking little smile. It's really, really, whoa, and it's filling the room with their energy. So there are nuances to it, but either way, part of this work, what it does is it helps us hold. Therefore, there's an important here that if our partner is expressing anger, can we hold it? Because often what happens is that anger is one of these emotions which a lot of people don't know how to deal with very well because of their early childhood experiences of maybe their parents being angry or whatever. So what happens then is when my partner gets angry, I begin to not like it. So I'll either make it wrong over there or I'll check out. Either way, I'm not really holding it. Because one of the best ways you can heal in the moment is to be willing to be present to what is. And if anger is what is, be present and hold it. Now that's hard if it's passive aggressive and rage. Because if it's rage, it could be quite dangerous. If it's passive aggressive, it's what are you really holding? So anger needs to be clean before it can be held. Does that make sense? And when it is clean, it's actually quite easy to hold. Anyone else relate to that? Like it's actually really hard to deal with somebody's passive aggressive, indirect coded anger, where they're really pretending not to be angry. So how do you deal with somebody who's really passive aggressive and stuff like that? Well, first of all, and rageful, is that it's important to protect yourself in that. I think it's very important that you honor, and like some people say, oh, I'm just going to love my partner unconditionally in all moments, and I'll just give them whatever space they need. Not sure if I would do that in all moments. So therefore, self-preservation is an important piece to it, taking care of yourself. But when it's clean and it's direct, and if it's somebody can access that, very, very easy to hold, and holding space for it, feeling them, acknowledging it, not making the anger wrong, ensuring that they understand that you can hold it that you're there. They can feel you with that, because the anger is not something to be afraid of. But as I said, that's very different to rage and these passive aggressive energies that can be quite toxic. So the question very much depends on our relationship to anger. Does that make sense? Yeah, cool. Yes.
We did get a question in from the live stream before it went down from the chat. So we did get a question from the live stream before it went down from the chat. So this is from Jenny. How can we work on opening the back channel by ourselves?
So I just thought the question was kind of humorous. How do we open the back channel? By ourselves. How do we open the back channel by ourselves? There is a sacred combination of breath, movement, and energetic presence and attention that unlocks the back channel. So for example, if you're by yourself, this motion here, this pelvic rocking motion, is your baseline default rhythm. And then you'll start to practice feeling, as you move your spine, where about do you have restriction in your spine? Better do it this way, it looks weird from the front end. Yeah, baby. So as I'm rocking my pelvis here, that's the first movement here. It's not this, because that's just hip. It's this. Can you control the pelvis, the sacrum rotating in and out? Think of the back channel starts with the generating force at the core as we do this part here, and then we can expand our lumbar spine and go, okay, now how flexible can we do that? And then it's the thoracic spine. And as we move, and we begin to feel like, where are we blocked in here? So movement is one part, and it moves in a wave as we move here. It's a bit weird. He's pissing himself with laughter. And then you add sound to that experience. How do you do this alone? You can tell I'm not alone, bloody hell. And then, so, easiest done lying down. I have found lying on my right side is the most available side. And it's, so as I'm moving my spine, and I'm producing sound as well, because sound is one of the things that helps move energy. And I'm also, so movement, sound, and breath. So it's my breath. And usually the breath, I have to find the rhythm, but it's usually quite fast. As I'm building that energy up. Bam! And then it opens up the back channel. So that type of breath with movement and the right sound at the right time unlocks your back channel. Thanks, Jenny. Okay, who's next, if you dare? God.
How can we create a safe environment if we want to explore the edges of our polarity together?
Especially if we're not somewhere.
Yes,
like
if we're
a
not in a
retreat.
setting like this, if we come home and we feel like exploring more of the edges.
Okay, first of all, you and your partner, are you assuming that your partner has done this work, or could it not be doing this work at all?
I mean, both would be interesting.
Okay, well, let's just start with the assumption that you're both aware of this work.
Yes.
Because that becomes easier, because you now create clear agreement, because you know the importance of creating that container, so you create real sacred clear agreements. Then what you do is you actually consciously bring it in, perhaps like some of the work you did today, where you actually say, let's put on a piece of music and dance and move and explore this. So that's very, very easy as a way. You can literally do what Rule and Sheila did, but do it to some music and make it a part of your routine as your intimate time together. That could be one way. But with clear agreement and with clear blocked out time for that. Now, one of the best ways to practice polarity in a relationship outside of a retreat like here is actually how, in terms of your normal lovemaking. In terms of your sexual life becomes your playground and your laboratory for new ways to experience polarity. So, for example, as you explore with each other sexually, you have a chance to play with this idea of leadership and surrender. Who, not just on who's on top and who's on bottom, but how about taking this sex away from the bedroom, because the bed is kind of limiting, and it's also filled with conditioning. It's got this, it's like this whole thing where when we're on the bed, then it ends up being bedroom sex. But instead, do it somewhere else. And I don't mean the type of places that you associate with risky sex, like let's just bang in the bathroom. It could be actually laying out a nice open space in the lounge on the floor, and that becomes your place of intimacy. Lock the pets away, unless you happen to like that thing. Do you have any pets?
No, I don't have pets.
Okay. And then what happens is, and then you can use that as a conscious place for you to practice your lovemaking, and you get to explore these dynamics of connecting with each other with polarizing your relationship. And I think you can do that whether the partner has done this work or not. It's just that every single couple needs facilitation, really. And that, in terms of leadership, somebody needs to lead in a couple in all moments, because every group needs that leadership. Otherwise, it just gets flaky and nobody knows where each other's going. But that leadership can change depending on who's clearest and who's most in their heart. So if you happen to have the clarity of what it is, you can invite your man, for example, to do something like that, especially if it's something as juicy as making love in that kind of... I mean, who's not going to say yes to that? I mean, yay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, yes, your sexual laboratory is your way forward with a partner when you're not in this kind of space.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can play with polarity the whole day on different places, like you said, on different ways, of course, not only sexual, but also in your kind of contact and movements. But you can't, and it's still very juicy and nice to do it, but you can't do it the whole day.
No.
So there are moments that you want to be out of contact or you want to do your own things. But sometimes one person want contact with you, the other, and you don't want it. How can you deal with that? The difference between those two people and the difference in the...
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. Fantastic question. Because you're absolutely right. Let there be spaces in our togetherness. Meaning intimacy grows not when we're 24/7, but when we have times apart where we can reconnect to self and then recollect ourselves and bring ourselves back with our partner. So one of the common mistakes is that we spend so much time together, we merge, and we forget who we are. So first of all, I want to acknowledge the health of having our own space in times to take care of ourselves and to find our solid ground. So we can come back and share our lovely selves with the other and that creates polarity. But your question is important because you said, well, what if we have different longings around that time out? What if one of us wants to have time together and the other one wants to have time apart? And is polarity going to be affected by that? And of course, we're not always going to be in sync, always. I mean, that's an unrealistic expectation. However, again, it goes back to solid agreements. If we are clear about the containment of our relationship, within those agreements, it could be time boundaries, our commitments, time where we can set aside for our quality time, but we also include in those agreements really good solid time that's away from each other, where we can have time to digest. So that's really a communication practice now, is how clear are you with your partner about your needs? And if you shared those needs clearly, and you hear your partner's needs, there's a negotiation that takes place. And there's always a negotiation, but I don't believe negotiation means compromise. In other words, I don't think you have to give up anything if you truly love yourself and your partner, if you are clear. Because I always believe that love will find its way. And if you both are coming from that intention of giving each other what they want, because you love your partner, you want them to have what they want, and they love you and they want you to have what you want, you will find that path together. And because that love is present, the polarity is so much more rich. Polarity doesn't exist without love at its foundation. Yeah. Yeah, cool. Great question. Yes? Over there.
Okay. If one partner is watching porn and the other one doesn't like it, what would that do to the polarity and the trust in a relationship?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So when she loves it and he doesn't like it, I'm joking. It can be that way, but it often, as we all know, is the majority of the time it's the other way. Let me just speak about pornography generally. I've had my own relationship with porn that hasn't always been healthy. I used to sell porn videos when I was younger, £5 a piece at school. And they got recorded so many times on VHS that the videos went black and white eventually because they were watched so many times. This is all the day before DVD. And you know, this is when I was 14, 15, and I had this coursing sexual energy that moved through me. I didn't know what to do with it. And I was a bit of an entrepreneur, and I thought, I'll just sell some porn videos. And I was labeled as Porn King. That was my nickname when I was younger. So I know this energy very, 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 very well. And I know the destructive force it has on intimacy. What it did is it objectified my nervous system. It made me see women in a way that I couldn't feel them beyond the objectification of their body. And then I would be judging their quality based on their body. And that's been a really, really hard one to get out of my system. And I realized that pornography was a way of it feeding me, and it meant that I didn't need to go and get that feeding from my intimate partner. So it disturbed my relationships, or it created or attracted relationships that didn't open my heart. And 10, 15 years ago, when I completely cut that part of my life out, it opened such rich spaces in me. And it was not always easy, but the benefit to my open heart and my relationship has just been amazing. And at the same time, I'm really compassionate to men or women who are addicted to pornography and find it hard to come off that. So I don't judge that and say, you come on, cut it out, you need to not do it so you're more present with your woman, because I know it. You know, when you've experienced something, it's so easy to make that wrong. And I realize that when you make men wrong or women wrong for that experience, that only creates shame, and shame is one of the triggers for addiction. So it only kind of perpetuates that. And what I found is that with any addiction, you can't remove it, you can only replace it. And what I did is I went on a journey where I opened my heart, and I started to connect more to my emotions, specifically my anger. Specifically my anger. So as I connected more to my natural owned rage, and I embodied that power, my need to see porn dismantled automatically without having to do much at all. So I didn't try to remove the addiction. I instead expanded my emotional energetic range. And that automatically filled up my life to the point there was no room for the addiction. That makes sense? Now, then your question also goes to, but then how do you deal with that if you're in a partnership and your partner is really addicted to porn and you don't like it? That was your specific question. It's really hard. So I want to first acknowledge that the fact that that is not an easy place to be, because it's going to affect your intimacy. It may create feelings of repulsion in the partner, like, ugh, yuck, I don't like it. And it could even be a deal breaker. You might even say, you know what, this is not okay. If you continue to do this, I'm leaving. But if you choose to stay, there is, I think the best way you can support your man or your woman is to try first of all, do not fix, and to try and make him wrong for it. This is almost impossible, I know, in some moments, because it can build up so much frustration. However, there is, and it's interesting because a lot of partners will sometimes, subtly throw in a book on their shelf, like, hey, read this. It's like how to deal with your porn addiction. And it's kind of like the guys will go, they know they're trying to be fixed insidiously. But here's the ultimate truth. All healing has its time. And you can force, push, and push. No one's going to get over it unless it's time for them to get over it. And they've got to do it for themselves. And you may go, if you don't get over this, you're leaving, and they may do it initially to try and save the relationship. But ultimately, they need to go on this journey to expand their emotional range if they're ever going to get a solid recovery from that. They'll just bounce right back, or even worse, they'll do it in more secret. They'll find better ways to hide it. But the reality, there's only one way through addiction, and that is to get addicted to your own goodness. And that journey only is ready for those people who are open to it. And that may be in a day, it could be in a year, it could be never. The question I would say to all partners is this: can you accept your partner for who they are and for who they're not today? And if you cannot love and fully accept who they are today as they are, not your potential of what you may see in the future, if you can't do that today, you should question why you're even in that relationship, because you're settling in the now for the hope of something better in the future.
Yeah, I'm not in that relationship.
No, don't worry. That's okay. So, don't talk about me. That's like, I was just talking about hypothetically. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I get it. But it's a great question for those who are. Thank you. That's great. Great. Are there any other? Actually, yeah, one last one very quickly.
Okay. When I was in the Polarity dance this afternoon with my partner, because she's lighter, I did not feel met in my physical force, and also not when I surrendered. So does it mean that I cannot experience my whole range?
No. Polarity through movement, like we did earlier, was only a mechanism to demonstrate polarity. It's just one small way, one tiny way, through movement. So if your partner happens to be much tinier, you may not get the match that you're looking for. Doesn't matter. There's so many other ways to express polarity. Sexually, if you really want to do it physically, sounds a bit weird, but you can actually restrain yourself, make it harder on yourself. Get taped up or bound up in a sheet. You know what I mean? There are many creative ways if you really want to make it easier for your small petite women to have you. You can find ways to do it creatively if you really are attached to that mechanism. But like we saw here with Rule and Sheila, how you communicate creates incredible polarity.
Right.
How you share love, how you appreciate each other, how you connect, how you move through life, how you stand in your energy, how you're present for her.
All right.
Do you understand what I mean? It's so little to do with the physicality.
Yeah.
We were just showing the physicality, so it's an easy way to see it.
Yeah.
But the polarity comes in so many forms.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. All right, so we're coming to the end now of not just tonight, but also these 3 series or 3 nights of broadcast. And I really hope that you've enjoyed what has been presented here. I know I've had a lot of fun and crazy times. And I know technology always isn't perfect, so if you've had a bug here or there or things aren't working, please apologize. We're doing the best that we can when we do all of this live. Now, just be aware as well that at this time we are opening and launching our new Heart IQ Relationship Academy. And this is a program that teaches singles, couples, and professionals, or people who want to be a professional coach, how to have a fabulous relationship or manifest one or coach those relationships so that you can now build a career out of coaching couples using the heart intelligence frameworks that I'll be teaching you. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience which combines a 6-day live event of professional and personal training, as well as 6 months of coaching with me over the phone. So if that's something that you're interested in, there is a link, or should be, under the video. Definitely on the replay, there'll be one under the video. And you can always get access to that link on the email that's be coming when we send you the replay in just a few hours. It'll probably be tomorrow by the time you find that on your inbox. But for now, I'd just like to wish you a very happy night wherever you are. I can't wait to take the next journey with you, and I hope you decide to take this deeper, and I hope you've enjoyed this wonderful experience over the last 3 nights. Leave a comment below if you can, and I will speak to you very, very soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.